Hello, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to GTR show number 2. So glad that you could join us. So GTR is an acronym for Guitar, Technology, and Recording. And we have got a very interesting show for you today because we're really kind of digging in on that streaming and recording side of things. I'm going to be running through a number of my favorite things from the, if you will, Doppler playbook over the past year of learning a lot, sometimes in the hot seat, sometimes in the discovery seat. But the interesting thing is that collectively, as I went to prepare for today, I realized two very important things that I want to encourage you about. One is that you never really feel like you know enough. And two, you got to be okay with that. All right, so what we're going to do here is we're going to walk through a number of different types of strategies, concepts, technologies, such that we're kind of all on the same page. And invariably, we're going to come back and revisit this. I'll revisit this in some standalone videos. But the interesting thing that's happened recently for me is I had a chance to kind of build a studio from scratch. I don't know if you happen to see the thing that I did on the dearly departed Doppler Gear Garage live stream about I was down in Carmel and I had to set up a remote video studio in a hotel room. So kind of how I went about doing that. Like literally I had to set up lights and a camera and to be able to record that and document the guitar, and it was a whole endeavor. And you know, the interesting thing is I love a challenge. So when the end results was I had this great opportunity to kind of walk away from that experience and go, wow, from an empty hotel room to be able to set up a full production that nobody besides the people that I shared with on the live stream actually knew that it was shot in a hotel room. So with that said, what we're going to do is talk about this stuff in the framework of my last 24 hours, because I did a couple of things that I would never, ever, ever suggest doing, but it's only because I'm used to this process and had enough backups that if I really found myself up a tree, hello, Billy Holting, great to see you, my friend, that I knew that I would be able to kind of climb down from the tree. So first of all, I want to say good morning to everybody that's tuning in. If you're on the East Coast or you're in Europe or something like that, good afternoon. So first of all, this is going to be a lot of fun. We're going to get a chance to do some interesting things. We will be taking some questions. If you're down inside YouTube, there are 2 links that are there that we'll make sure that we get over inside the thread for Facebook somehow sooner than later. So first of all, let's say, hello, good to see you, Himanshu. Wow, I wish I looked like that. Great to see you, my friend. Holy cow, that's awesome. All right, so let's, first of all, if everybody would just say, hey, you know, this is who I am, this is where I'm coming, tuning in from, and these are the kind of questions I've got around technology. Put them in the doc that is in the YouTube description, and I will endeavor to get that doc up on the screen here as well. And it's not going to, it actually should be able to be pastable in Facebook. So I'm going to see if my assistant will be able to endeavor to do that. And that assistant would, of course, be the one and only Melissa Doppler. Okay. So, Bruce Adolph, great to see you. Glad you like the t-shirt. You know, I'm going to start there with the t-shirt, and then I'm going to look at all these great folks. First of all, the t-shirt, Billy, great to see you. Thank you so much. Jim, how you doing? Great to see you. Thanks for sharing that picture. I was really privileged to see that. Sonia, good afternoon. There we go. Exactly. Thanks for joining us. Sonia is an inventor and great guitar player and one of my favorite human beings. Ramiro, good morning to you. Buenos dias. Billy, I'm used to you. Melissa Doppler, there we go. There, she shared that link in Facebook with the questions. So if you got questions, there's the doc that you can use to do that. Andy Guitar, great to see you. Good evening, I think it is in Germany there, or late afternoon. And Gabe Metzger, great to see you, my friend. Okay, look at all these folks saying hi. Hello, hello, Eric Martin Bureau. Oh, my word, they're all rolling in here. Okay. Mike Haas, hello, Massachusetts. JPGU, awesome. Holy cow. David Lewis, great to see you, my friend. Awesome. So David, I'm going to hang with you for just a second. So this shirt, the reason I wore this is that when I started playing music, this was the idiom. Behind me, the box is actually kind of hidden right now, is a wah-wah that I got it to add to the Wall of Wah collection that's back there. And I was thinking about the guitar player that I grew up being, where you had a couple of stomp boxes if you were lucky. You had a guitar and you had an amplifier, and that was it. The whole paradigm of this Zoom and streaming and all of this stuff could be, one, mind-numbing, and two, scary. So, with that said, Rob, hello to Pasadena. Great to see you. With that said, we're going to kind of start at the beginning part here. And what I endeavored to do, I got a new computer, and I kind of went a little hog wild at the end of last year. So first of all, let me be really clear about the fact that I realized that not everybody is in the position to be buying gear right now. So this is my business. So if you were a contractor and you needed a new truck, you would endeavor to go out and hopefully be able to find a way to get that truck when you need it. So with that said, I just want to be sensitive to the fact that I kind of went hog wild, but it was an investment in my business for 2021. All right, first of all, who would like to venture a guess on what camera I'm actually shooting with? And here's the thing, my guess is you will be wrong. So this is part of the show and tell of what we're doing today. First and foremost, I bought some of these crazy Blackmagic 6K cameras because I wanted to be able to take what I was doing for streaming and for capturing standalone video, one or both of which is going to be something that you're going to be interested in doing. Whether or not it's in your professional life as a musician or your professional life as a weekend warrior, our ability to have an on-screen persona that speaks of professionalism somehow sends a number of messages that we want to share. Oh my word, Arlen Salte. Look at that, one of my dear friends. That is a great guess. So the interesting thing about this, that's pretty darn close. So I got a new iMac Pro. And based on the suggestions of my dear friend Andrew Bonica, I've started buying refurbished stuff. That is to say, from the Mac store that were things that there was a problem with. Because you can save a bunch of money, and if you're crafty about how you set up your purchases, you can get a discount from Mac, which is kind of an unheard of thing, unless you're a student. So what I endeavored to do last night and this morning was kind of be you, which is like, okay, I'm starting from zero. What is the smallest amount of stuff that I have to make this thing happen, right? The idea is this is a black hole of time, energy, emotion, and money. You can go deeper than you'll ever have time to actually outwork. So the thing about all of this is actually the stock camera in my new iMac Pro. Now, I say that, one would think that the quality of such a camera would be typical of an iMac or an iMac Pro. The last iMac that I bought last year, the camera was literally so bad, I actually, in the streaming software that I use that I'll be talking about in a moment, I literally disabled the stock camera, which was so bad I just never wanted to be on screen with it. I never wanted to accidentally select it. We'll come back to that in a minute. So the idea is, first and foremost, finding some sort of camera that's going to get you there. You don't have to spend a ton of money. So one of the things that I would suggest is, one is seeing if the on-screen camera, which in this case, I am completely blown away by the quality of this. Number two, you can get a great quality picture out of your iPhone. And these things in the settings enable you to get down and actually have 4K. And you can connect them via basically a traditional USB Lightning connection into the back of that. And I should say, yes, USB Lightning connection into the back of that, and you're able to bring that into an application like this. So let me just briefly hang out on the camera thing for a moment, because it is interrelated to a number of pieces of this. Using a stock camera is great. Last year, I basically bought the standalone kind of Mac webcam, really good. What's neat about it is you can kind of configure it to be in different places. I was impressed with that. There are a number of places that you can go once you start to deep dive with some of these things where it gets expensive. I put together a list that is in the YouTube, the very beginning. It's actually in the description and it's at the top of the chat there, where thanks to my dear friend Tom, I finally put together a list of Doppler suggested gear. That includes video and audio gear and streaming companies. And most of that stuff is affiliate links, so I'll just say that in advance. I make a little bit of something, but that is part of the business model of today. So finding a camera that is multi-purpose is really the deal. And ultimately, if you're looking for kind of the name of the game, finding flexibility in the gear that you use is important. That is to say, the main camera that I've used up until this point, and it's sitting right over there, is a Canon EOS R. That is a roughly $2,000 camera with a special adapter. You can use your EF and EFS lenses on that, and the Blackmagic 6K cameras also enable you to use those EF and EFS lenses. So the idea of having a camera that you can potentially use as a, if you will, a virtual webcam, and then for the EOS R, because it's got a pop-out screen that you can use for vlogging, and then you can just use for regular photos, that is a smart investment because it allows you to do a number of things really well. Spend your money once. Sony, the Alpha A7S III has just come out. It's like $3,000, no lens included. Right now, that is the go-to camera for a lot of people. There's a swift herded migration headed there, and for good reason. The guy named, if you haven't heard of Paul Davids, check out his YouTube channel with like 1 million subscribers. There is a look that the Sony cameras have that is stunning. Okay, so then why with that would I go buy these guys? Because let's see if I can go to my desktop camera without total mayhem. And I didn't quite finish the story of going into today because I jumped into cameras, but we're going to kind of tell that story as we go along. All right, so here is my Mini Pro ISO, and I apologize this is not set up. It's a better shot. And there, you got to have some oatmeal. So much for professionalism. So this ATEM Mini ISO is a box that you can use to bring multiple cameras into. And that is an ecosystem that we're going to go to a little bit later because most people aren't going to need to go that deep. We're going to talk about that more. The short version is you can bring multiple cameras in there. You can switch between them. You can stream from that box. But most importantly for me, I can capture the individual camera inputs that are going into there on an individual hard drive. I can bring that hard drive into a DaVinci, the Blackmagic DaVinci software, and it literally brings in all 4 of those inputs, but unedited. And you can then mix and match at will. The downside is that's all at 1080p. The great thing is that these cameras, the Blackmagic 6K cameras, you can capture at ridiculous resolution on cards. The ones of which I literally bought because my idea with data is to buy big. So let's back up a step. Minimal amount of stuff. I am literally shooting with a webcam because I thought, you know what? Let's go with the minimum needed. I'm using an application that I swear by called Ecamm Live. You cannot go wrong with Ecamm Live. It is great for being able to bring in what's called a virtual webcam. So basically what you're looking at, again, is the stock webcam, so you don't really have to do any patching. But when I go to my overhead cam here, first of all, I'm not going to go to live demo mode, but I can tell you that if I want to sweeten up this image a little bit, and let me make sure I've got the right image there. There we go. I can do a couple of things in post to warm it up, add a little bit of saturation, and just take that image and make it a little bit sweeter. And I can also do kind of interesting things like that. Now, I don't have my desktop lit as I might normally do it, but you get the point. That sort of flexibility is built into this application. That is also dovetailed into another application I use called Restream. And as you might imagine, Restream basically allows you to take an application like Ecamm Live and send that out to multiple places. In this particular instance, I'm streaming to 3 locations. My Doug Doppler official Facebook account. I'm restreaming also to my personal account, and I'm also streaming to YouTube. Now, one of the other pieces of this equation is, what about Zoom? Because many of us are guitar teachers, and that's, again, for those of us, a moment ago I mentioned that in our professional lives, we're working with Zoom. The great thing about Ecamm Live is I'm able to take that virtual webcam from Ecamm Live and bring that into Zoom. There are also some settings in Zoom that enable you to basically, depending on whether you have a traditional account or, like myself, you kind of have an upgraded account, allow you to manipulate the audio. I'm going to be doing a standalone video about that. But the short version is that if you go into the audio settings and there's an extra, an advanced tab, you can basically turn on or off this little thing that basically says turn on or turn off original audio. And you want it so it says turn off original audio because it means that it is with the original audio on. And basically what that means is it's not applying the funky algorithms that basically destroy guitar. So with that said, let me just take a moment and let's take a look. Daniel, pleasure. Thank you so much. All right, awesome. So in a minute, I'm going to open up that dock over there. But the idea of having an ecosystem kind of at the front end of this stuff that is just plug and play is really important. So again, literally this new computer showed up. It's been a bit of a busy week. I was like, all right, let me start. And I literally yesterday afternoon started from zero because I was like, let me be you. So I was like, all right, what is the process I'm going to use with a new computer? First and foremost, and fortunately for me, there's a Mac migration application that failed and cost me about 4 hours of my day yesterday. The end result, however, was that instead of, and I've traditionally done this, so as you, again, think about whether you're taking your existing computer or taking a new computer and you're migrating stuff over, as you do that, you bring all your space junk with you. Now, one of the things that I noticed was one of the applications that I brought over was literally 225 megabytes. Actually, I downloaded it from the web and I was like, 225 megabytes? That's like a quarter of a gig almost. All of a sudden you begin to think about, as you multiply that out times all the applications you potentially have on your hard drive, you begin to realize you're suffocating your machine for space. And that RAM and that bandwidth on your hard drive matter. So the idea is a couple of best practices as you go into any of this stuff. Have as few applications open as possible. 2, if you're streaming, never have Word open. It messes with everything. Number 3, minimal number of browser windows if at all possible. And number 4, test, test, test. Now, the great thing about Ecamm Live that enables you to do is you can just do a record audio locally. And the other thing about Ecamm Live that I've been doing is I've been using it actually to shoot all my demos. So I run all my cameras into multiple computers that I have different instances of it. I record it and I bring it into Premiere. I'm about to move into DaVinci Resolve as my main editing program for video. But this is, again, where we talk about a round trip. I'm going to come back to the software. Actually, I'm at software, so we're going to keep going on this. So Ecamm Live is an ecosystem for guitar players in particular. As you're just getting used to doing video and recording yourself with the option to stream or with the option to just record yourself into the computer and get used to doing that, there is no better product on the marketplace than that. I cannot recommend enough, and it's in the links. So again, the ability you can natively kind of toggle between stuff like this. I'm going to jump over, and my my audio is going to mute when I jump into the countdown. Oh, interesting. My countdown screen went small. Huh. Oh, well, okay. Regardless, it also gives you the ability to manage audio. So speaking of applications, there's another application that as you get deeper into the audio side of this, and in a moment we're going to be talking about the mistakes, of which there are many to be made, and I've made them all. More to come. There's an application called Loopback, which is the most amazing application in the world. The short version is with an audio interface, and I recommended 3 of them. I'm a Universal Audio person. The ability to come in from Universal Audio, there's an application that they use called Console that basically is a virtual console. Here's one of the challenges. Say I've got my speakers up, which in this instance I don't. I would mute the microphone input on Console, but that microphone input can still float around inside the computer, as can any other input. So ideally, you want to use something like Loopback, which in my opinion is the best that's out there. And you can, with the way it's set up, you can load it on multiple machines with the license. And then you choose exactly what's routed where. So it basically is a virtual patch bay for Mac. And if you're serious about streaming, and I don't know if Loopback is PC enabled, I'm pretty sure it is. I should know that, and I don't. But the reality is that it is the missing link because, and I learned this from Chris Stark. One day I was playing with a plugin. It's like, man, I can hear the direct signal. I was like, well, my mic is muted. And all of a sudden I kind of went, I know what it is. Even though the input on Console was muted, that was still coming through. So I was like, okay, lesson learned. And this is just one of those things. So testing your audio, doing a record locally, also testing your streams. Streaming up with on a personal Facebook account. You're not supposed to stream from Facebook personal accounts, but they still let you. Kind of strange, I don't know. But you can also set the way that stream is set up such that it's private. And by default, that's actually what it does. Every time I go to stream to that, I have to change the permissions from private to public, which is why you're seeing it there now. The idea is that you want to do a test stream and see how's the audio, how's the video, how does it look? Is there something in the frame here that I'm going to regret later? Is there a garbage can back there? All these things that happen, and you begin to get a chance to go, okay, this is it. So testing. I will take that feedback. Yes, it is. Thank you very much. Awesome. Yes. And that, excuse me, is in the link that is, I think Melissa has posted now in the both Facebook feeds, as well as it's in the YouTube at the top of the chat and in the description. So again, it's like a mixing console. It's a virtual mixing console. It basically allows you to choose what is getting put through to your streaming application and what's not. Okay. So then, as long as we're on the application side of this, first of all, when you're streaming, have as few things open as possible. For us musicians, we have a number of different choices of what we can and can't do. One of which, oh my word, I brought all my toys. So if you're going to run audio, unless you have an exceedingly fast machine or have a secondary machine to run it from, I would strongly suggest, unless you do a lot of testing, not running an application like Pro Tools on the machine that you're streaming from, unless you're running something like a 2-track session and a minimal amount of stuff that you're doing. I would, in that instance, since you're kind of already running just a mix, bounce it down to something like one of these great little loop stations, which, by the way, are MIDI compliant, which means and I'm getting a little ahead of myself, but with a controller like the AirStep, means that you can stop and start that with a little MIDI magic. Backing up a step again, applications, when you're streaming, get as few things open as possible. The other thing that happens, and I don't quite know why, if you've got Facebook loaded and you've just got it in regular kind of view, and you click, the way you kind of do is you click on the date of when something was added to be able to view the chat. It automatically unmutes the audio. So if you're streaming, you start getting echo back into your audio. So just you want to get these things open in advance, or ideally have them on a second machine that you can monitor and work with. Again, testing this stuff is a great way to do it. But the looping audio thing, I actually heard it happen to a very, very, very famous YouTuber on their New Year's Eve stream, and I won't mention his name because I've never seen him make, any of those types of things happen, on any of his streams. But the point being is, it happens to the best of us. These windows open up, and every so often they start spouting audio, and it's not until the stream happens that it starts playing back. So it happens to the best of us. So the idea is test, 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 and test. So again, the concept of a looper is a great way to take all the hit off of your hard drive. You have total control, whether it's via some sort of alternate foot controller via MIDI, because then what you're able to do with this is, say you've got the loop station down on your pedal board or in the vicinity of your pedal board, you can have anything that's MIDI controllable on your pedal board kind of coincide with this, and you can set it up track by track. A huge amount of flexibility, again, takes all the hit off of your streaming machine. And again, if you need to run Pro Tools, which there are going to be instances to do that, generally running that on a secondary machine is the best way to do it and bring it in. And this is where a device like the ATEM Mini Pro, I've got the Mini Pro and the Mini Pro ISO, that's where they become valuable, because then you can do a couple of things that we want to watch out for. Latency and offset between your audio and your video. I remember the early streams when I first started doing this. Like, the audio and the video were drifting, and you look back at it and you just want to cringe. So the idea is, every opportunity that you've got marrying your audio and your video together in a way that you can control the audio levels is really important. That's where a box like this becomes really valuable. Since we're already there, we've gone through most of the main software packages. I actually do want to, hang on a second. Let me, I know that I'm going to, let me just take a look at what I've got going over here. I actually do want you guys to be able to see console for a quick second, because this is the universal audio application that I use. And most importantly, there's a really important application I'm using right now that I also want you to see as well. So let's see how this goes live without a net. And by the way, never do this. All right, so we're going to go over. Yep, okay. Wasn't set up to do that. All right, so there you go. So never do something without testing it first, because that's exactly what happens. But again, I've made all the mistakes, and I'm going to make more of them. The short version is console allows you to have this application. The other thing that I do here that is super important is there's an application, I should say a plugin from Universal Audio called Precision Limiter. And so I noticed on some of my previous streams that the level, and this is one of the things you want to do, you want to play your YouTube video or your stream and listen back and compare it to other videos. And I was like, I'm not as hot as I want to be. And there are certain things that I use every time I shoot a standalone video that I bring in to these types of videos. So at the top of the list there was like, oh, I'm just going to use the precision limiter, because I always use that at the end of the chain to bring up, excuse me, and level the audio for my vocals as well as the guitar, such that it's always set at -4 dB is the loudest it'll get. But that way I'm able to get a nice hot level that doesn't distort, never goes above -4 dB. It's the perfect level for video. And I swear by that. I've used it for over a year. It was invented by John Cunaberti. You might have heard me talk about that before. But basically, he had a whole mastering suite at the plant. And he basically worked with the Universal Audio folks to basically put that into a plugin. It is unreal. Okay. So the concept of this basic one camera, one application, you can run it out into Zoom if you want to. I will be teaching at 10:40 today, all day long, running out of Ecamm Live and going into Zoom using my Universal Audio Apollo 8 audio interface for that. Now, That said, it did not make it downstairs with me. That is unfortunate. So let's talk a little bit more about some of the hardware here real quick. The universal audio stuff, let me back up one step. There is no shame and nothing wrong about using just a kind of plug and play USB microphone. But I want to get you thinking about a couple of important things. One, I've got a shotgun up there. You can't see it. One of the great things about a shotgun is you don't hear any of the, see if I can do this without making it too bad, the conducted rumble you hear when people start typing on their keyboards. I also don't particularly like seeing a microphone in frame, and I realize it's very fashionable. Just because people are doing it does not necessarily mean that we should be doing it. So the idea of finding a good USB microphone, I've got a bunch of them. I'm going to be doing a bunch of videos on different ones. I'm a big fan of a shotgun for a couple of reasons. One is you can get it out of the frame. It was designed for the specific purpose, for video. It's not intended to be in the frame. The more it feels, especially in my opinion, a Zoom environment, a professional environment, a guitar teaching environment, and in my opinion, a streaming environment, the moment I put that microphone on, if you will, the podium, I'm now putting a line between myself and you. My whole strategy is I want to feel like we're hanging out. That thing, first of all, it's visually distracting, and it's just not the thing. As long as we're talking about visual stuff, one of the trends you'll see, I'm very fortunate enough to have a gear garage. So I kind of have a set of gear. One of the other trends is for folks that are kind of taking an extra room or a part of a room is using some background lights and then doing that. There are a number of things that you can do to kind of create a wrapper around your video and create overlays. And one of the great applications, backtracking just a step here, but this is really important, is Keynote. There are some amazing things that you can do with PNGs, which allow you to have transparency, where you can basically create an interface. You can actually bring in animations. It is an incredibly powerful program, and it's not part of the Adobe Creative Suite. Oh, I'm back in software again. Fine. So the thing about the Adobe Creative Suite is I use Premiere pretty much every day. I use Photoshop pretty much every day. There's an application called Fireworks, which has kind of been discontinued. It's a great object-oriented graphics program. Photoshop's in layers. It's less clunky than it used to be, but you used to have to select whatever layer you wanted, and the workflow was a little slow, but it's great for photos. It's the best for photos. So I tell you what, let me just finish up on this little thing, and I'm going to take some questions because I want to make sure that we do that. So as you begin to think about backing up just a couple of steps, simple camera, webcam. As you're looking for your potential cameras, I always go on to Amazon and B&H, Photo Video, and I look at not just the good reviews, but I also parse and look for the most negative reviews, and I look for repeating themes. For example, this little hard drive, and we're going to get there in a minute. Chris Stark had this whole kind of thread going on his Facebook about these T7s. I bought both the T7 and the T5 because I'm going to test them. So the T5, and I'm rabbit trailing here, but bear with me. T5 has bazillions of amazing reviews. The T7, which is basically twice as fast, has lots of positive reviews, but the reason I bought it as red, as kind of a joke, is they have a reputation for some folks for heating up, like getting so hot that you can't touch them. So I'm going to do some tests and check them out, but always parse down and look for the negative reviews. When it comes to doing gear, same thing with Sweetwater. I look at the number of stars, and then I look for the most negative reviews. I also look and see if they're in a particular time frame, because there are sometimes manufacturing things that happen that they fix. So if all these comments, like in particular, as I was looking at these guys, I was going, well, if there's like a 2 or 3 month period where there's a problem, and then you see that problem go away in the comments, and you kind of go, all right, they fixed it, right? But the other comment was, these things just like to disconnect themselves from your Mac in the middle of some intense moment. That's a little bit of a problem. So that said, that process of research is really important because you want to spend the money once. So again, super impressed with this camera. I would never have thought about live streaming with the stock camera in my old iMacs. Never would have done it. This is great. Number two, as you think about an upgraded camera, one that you can potentially vlog with and shoot photos with that's all purpose. Honestly, the iPhone at this point, you could do that and you would feel no shame. And then you can take it with you anywhere, and it's great. It's just down in the settings where you have the ability to really begin to modify that. You can then start going to more expensive cameras when you start thinking about bringing these things into an ecosystem where you're going to want to use a switcher and capture that stuff potentially to drives. Getting back to the software side of things, Adobe, I would have to say, maybe on their way out. You see a lot of people switching to DaVinci Resolve from Premiere. You see Canva and Keynote replacing the need for Photoshop in a lot of instances. So Keynote comes free on your Mac, and it's unbelievably powerful. There's some great tutorials, especially out in the Ecamm world. So you might want to check that out. All right, let me just kind of poke through here and get that doc open that Melissa sent over, and two, that's so funny. All right, there we go. Let me poke down here and say hi to a couple of folks. I saw Tom come in. Ooh, first of all, great to see you. And one day you're going to tell me, or maybe you can tell me now, what does bent Tom, are you just kind of, just a little bent? Or where does the name come from? I'm sorry to hear that. And yeah, so, okay. So I'm going to marinate on that point. Test. Generally speaking, the last half an hour before I go live, I kind of do a couple of things, just make sure everything's set. Generally for this show, I spend all day Friday preparing because this is my new show and I want it to be the best it can be. So in the process of that, let's see here. There's the form. Melissa Doppler, can you do me a favor, if possible, text me the output of the form. I've got the input of the form, or just send it to my email address, and I'll be able to grab it from there, sweetheart. Thank you. Okay, and yep, that'd be great. Okay, so the idea is you want to test stuff because stuff goes wrong, and so testing it locally. The great thing about Ecamm, you can record stuff, and then you can also, like I mentioned before, send out a test stream that for YouTube is not public, and just get all these things tested because stuff will go wrong. So, Brad, what's going on? Great to see you. So let's see there. There we go. There's the questions. Okay, there we go. And that's the update there. Awesome. Thank you, love. Okay. All right. Okay. All right. Perfect. Thanks so much. Oh, great. Oh, boy. All right. First of all, thanks so much. Okay, I'm going to start with Miguel from El Monte, California. Routing modern day foot pedals. Oh, wow. We're going into gear. You know what? Oh, no, but this is totally tied in. I'm going to go there. That's great. Routing modern day foot pedals, i.e. pre-post with the Eventide H9. Best way to use 2-notes cab with an effects loop and silent record. That must be a spillover from last night. Stuff like that. I'm asking for a friend. Happy New Year, Doug. Loving what you're doing in Facebook and YouTube. Okay, so let me answer that as it relates to a live streaming. So this is one of the things about this particular thing where, okay, now we're using a microphone. we are potentially having sound in the room. Although some folks, oh my word, that wasn't the one that I meant to leave up. Holy cow. Oh, but thank you. All right, so the deal is, this guy, my only complaint is you can hear the foot switch. But basically it has dual XLR. I'm not used to where this camera is. There we go. XLR ins and outs. And basically it allows you to toggle, first of all, if you wanted to go out into a PA and in this case to my audio interface, and then you've got your input, and it has phantom power. So it enables me to turn my shotgun on or off, which means that then if I wanted to have audio up in the room, I could do that and mute that microphone. Of course, the classic thing that happens is I forget to unmute it. So you do stuff like this, and I post these little guys up in the room. Hang on, what do you got to say here? There we go. Hang on. No way. RJ, whoa, dude, hey! One of the baddest, most awesome guitar players. All right, so hang on. I'm not going to like fanboy, but I am just going to say he's one of the most... You just watch this guy play on this live stream. He's just like, yeah. And it's not like he's like, yeah, I got this. He's just like, he's just got it. Welcome, welcome, welcome. Okay, as I was saying, so the whole Ecamm thing, RJ, so the interesting thing about this community, hey, I'm going to bring this in. Hang on, just one sec. Here we go. All right. Have you used the interview feature much? My issue was interview mode. My guests were having problems, the app freezing on their end. Okay. So we're going to go back, and I'm going to come back to you, Miguel, in just one moment. So the interview mode I use a ton. So I, without big noting and any of that stuff, one of the things that I just literally did a final edit for yesterday was a tech track for NAMM. And I had 3 guests, one in the UK, one in Alabama, and one in Chicago, that I shot their footage separately using the guest feature. Then I brought it into post and I edited it all together. The one issue that I'm having right now with some of the folks is there's some latency when they're in there. I think that is a quote-unquote local issue with the guests. I think, RJ, I'm going to recap something that I mentioned before, and this is actually good for you and I to keep in mind, because what we arguably quote-unquote should do, and I haven't done, is actually put together a little document for anybody that's going to be coming on. RJ, I already know that you know to close unwanted applications, make sure Word's not running, which, by the way, in case you're wanting to have some sort of outline thing, Word is a great instinct of an application to do that from. But that gets us to another thing here, which, again, is the Padcaster, excuse me. So this will sit there and allow you to have your bullets in front of you on basically a little teleprompter. So the point being is that putting together a list of stuff for folks, just saying, hey, come in from Google Chrome, which is the number 1 thing. Number 2, when possible, do some testing. Number 3, make sure they don't have a ton of other applications open in the background. Number 4, they don't have their email open for notifications. Number 5, that they do a restart before they come on. Like all the things that you and I know to do before a stream, our guests don't necessarily know to do that. And they might, but it still never hurts to remind them, because when you think about coming in as a guest feature, you're not thinking that you're streaming, you're thinking that you're just guesting on, like Zoom, right? In Zoom, you can have a bunch of stuff opening in the background. But the other thing is that, RJ, the Ecamm folks are, I'm sure you know them, but if you don't know Katie at Ecamm, I will be happy to introduce you, because first of all, they don't want stuff like this happening in the middle of a live stream, especially, congratulations. RJ, by the way, has 100,000 plus subs, so he is rocking it. So the whole point is that we don't want to have stuff like stalling in the middle of a stream, because it's awkward for a presenter, especially like when you got 100,000 subs. It's like, it's not the time that you want stuff going south, so to speak. So if you got any other questions, please bring them. But, I started using Ecamm. So the funny thing is, what's great about this thing, and by the way, folks, one of the neat things is if you're interested in streaming, go out and watch what people do. RJ has an amazing, like a minute earlier, I mentioned Paul Davids, because, Paul was one of the first people when I'm like, okay, who's got a bazillion subs and do I love the look of the most? And it's just one of those things, you see the Sony look. And then I kind of was watching RJ one day and I was like, you know what, let me super chat this guy. I'm going to ask some questions. Tell me about your rig, what you're using, because it looked great, sounded great, and worked great. Ecamm, Sony camera, Audio Technica shotgun, and again, that whole thing I was talking about before, do you really want this between you and your audience? Or if you're on a Zoom meeting, you know, it just is off-putting as opposed to the interpersonal side of this. The other thing is don't leave overlays up for too long. All right. To be continued. And with pleasure, always. And dude, what playing every time, dude, you just like, you drip music, seriously. And I mean that. All right, so this whole thing about the audio thing, the great thing about being able to use this guy on your shotgun is that it means that you can have the amp up in the room and it doesn't bleed into the shotgun. Now, one of my dear friends, and I'm not going to mention his name, who is, I think, watching the stream, I was watching him switch cameras. And there was this latency and offset as he was switching cameras. And one of the things that was happening was going back and forth between his direct signal and then the microphone blended with the direct signal. And you had this weird delay thing happening. So this is one of the reasons that, and I don't have my mixers out here in the midst of all my goodies here, but this is one of the reasons where you want to go audio interface or mixer. One of the benefits of using a mixer is that it brings everything in at one point of entry, and if it's synced coming in to that mixer, it's going to be synced coming out. If you just think about a front of house mixer. The downside of using something like the Apollo is you've got stuff going on inside the DAW. Sometimes things can be offset. That is to say, there is a tendency to marry audio with the HDMI input of a camera and bring things in that way. I did that within the first or second time I was messing with HDMI stuff, and I immediately saw the offset. And I thought, never again. So the idea is, again, my solution is I bring it in with the Apollo 8. I then use loopback such that everything's coming into loopback. I can choose what's on, what's off, and then I test it and I check the offset. The other thing that you can do is loopback has an offset that I think is a video offset that you can offset the number of frames. So you can then you record in Ecamm, and then you watch back. And if your audio is out of sync, then what you do is you can kind of move the two so they're there. So basically, sometimes what will happen, for example, is that on these cheaper HDMI capture devices, which, by the way, I didn't put it in the links, but I will. And again, there's a Google Doc that'll getting translated into the description here that basically has links to pretty much everything that's here. I didn't include the $14.95 capture card, but they work great. But there is a delay in the video sometimes, especially when you get a lot of stuff happening. So all of a sudden you play and the sync of the audio and the video is out. It's a bad end user experience, and we always want to create a great end user experience. So getting back to this whole question about using cab and effects loop for silent recording, I'm going to bring that question in, which may or may not be a spillover from last week, but regardless, it's perfect for this. So in the background, you actually can't see cab, but I've been using it a ton. And so if your only option is to basically have your shotgun or whatever mic you're using, and you don't have a box like this, this is where silent recording devices like cab and being able to capture your device and then using earbuds is really help. I actually hate wearing headphones. But as long as we're there, I'm going to give a recommendation that's not on the list. I love the Audio Technica. I think these are the ATH50s, I think is what these are. Why you want headphones like these is they're closed back, which means that if you give them to somebody to record vocals and they're in front of a microphone, that sound's not bleeding into the microphone. They're super comfortable. Most importantly for me as a guitar player, they're super accurate. They're not hyped, they're not weird, and they have a bazillion 5 stars on Sweetwater, which is kind of like, again, if they love it on Sweetwater, you're going to probably love it too. The point being is I use the Shure, Laura Davidson, who's the greatest in the world at Shure, sent me some of their in-ears, so I use those when I need to be on a Zoom call where I want to make sure that there's not any echo or any of that stuff happening. I'll put those in. Last week I was using them because I was using the Helix rack. So in this particular case, if we're talking about it, I've been using it a lot, and as a matter of fact, this amp is also a great example. That's the Tone Master Deluxe. I would take the direct out, run that into there. Oh, I'm peaking just a little tiny bit. All right. And then I would run that direct. So the neat thing is the same thing is true for any of the amps, like the, come on. Oh, gosh. No. The Plexi Marshall. So I used that a couple of weeks ago with the cab. Or Two Notes Torpedo. It wasn't cab, it was Captor X. But the point being, same difference. So let me just go back to your question here, which I did a really bad job of answering. Okay, that's a great question. So the short version, I can't bring that on the screen in this moment, but like if you're using, and this again, I'm going to tie this into the streaming conversation because it is a great topic. You've got an amp. You want to bring it into your stream. You don't really want to have it running at 100 dB with a microphone in front of it in the room. What do? Captor X is a great solution. There's an 8 ohm version and a 16 ohm version. I've got them both. So it enables me to basically take any amp that's in the room, put it in the box, either with the built-in software or I'm doing a bunch of demos around the Celestion Speaker Mix Pro. And then you can use that for your IRs. There's a bunch of other ways to do that. But the point being is now you've got this great sound that's in there. However, what if you want to use something like an Eventide H9? I would be running the H9 in the Amps Effects Loop. A great example of this is the Rev D20. Put in the effects loop. You can come out of the direct out on the back of the D20. You've got that captured in there, and then you're able to bring that in silently. And it's perfect for silent recording, but again, for streaming, it's perfect. You do then at that point need to make sure you've got your earbuds in. Again, at that point, that offset between your audio and your video is another thing. Now, this is one of the dangers about bringing a box like this in, is that there will be latency added. Every time, it's kind of like every time you plug in another vintage stomp box and another cable, your tone changes a little bit. Jimmy's tone wasn't sucking, so was it changing for the worse? It was just changing. So the idea is that you want to be aware of, again, that's one of the great things about Ecamm Live is watching what's happening sync-wise. So at that point, you begin to go, okay, look, if I have certain things happening inside the box and I have certain things happening outside of the box and there's an offset, can I adjust the offset of what's happening frame rate wise, playback wise, such that I can get them in sync? If I can't, then what are some of the things that I want to do? An example of this, on this particular machine, I could run Pro Tools and I could run Ecamm Live because I kind of went nuts. Oh, wow. The new one doesn't allow me to say, I think I got 128 gigs of RAM. And I went nuts. I think it's like the 18 core. Like I went bonkers. But the idea is if and when, especially for testing purposes for other people that are interested in this, if I want to test, can I run all these things at the same time? What can I get away with in this environment? You got to kind of know. It gets back to this whole thing about these drives. And I guess we're now on the switcher thing. So the idea is the advantage of a device like this and an external mixer is that if there's going to be some latency as you've got that switcher doing its thing and then bringing that into an application like Ecamm Live, then in turn is going with Restream to broadcast that out, you want to make sure that your ability to massage the offset of that stuff is there. A classic example for those of us, thank you for that, Melissa, is, I'm actually already there. Lonnie Good from Washington. Hello. Latency with cameras. What do you do? So we're there. You can, in Ecamm Live, hang on, I tell you what, I'm not going to mess around. There is the ability to get in there and I believe it is offset you can offset the audio or the video to try and get the more even inside Ecamm, which is great. The problem is that there are some other problems that are happening. So, for example, if I am, and this is a great example of this, if I'm in the box with my amp, and I've got that rig set up here, but I'm running a separate Pro Tools session over there, I want to make sure that I'm monitoring without any offset there, because there's latency that happens inside Pro Tools. One of the things that you want to do when you're using plugins that are actually in line while you're playing, you got to bring the sample rate down. Excuse me, the buffer down. So like 64 samples is the smallest buffer that I can play with and not feel. Excuse me, the largest I can play with. 32 is about right, but sometimes the computer starts giving you pops and things. So the idea is then making sure that when you're blending different audio sources together, because again, ultimately what we're talking about is this. We want to have audio that's playing in the background, and we want to play along. If you're a music educator, it means that I can share, and this is going to be part of my 2020 thing, I'm going to have backing tracks that I'm going to be sharing with my students. I'm going to have backing tracks that I'm selling via the Line 6 marketplace and on my website. And the idea is part of what I'm going to do in my lessons, and part of what I'm going to be doing in demonstrations of that is bringing those things in and then playing over the top of that, so people can kind of go, okay, this is how I can employ this, rather than going, here's the backing track, here's the patch, knock yourself out. So the idea is trying to make sure that, how do I minimize the potential for offset between those devices? So again, if I have the ability to use a switcher, so I've got no less than 10 cameras in this room that I can bring in via HDMI. And part of what I'm excited about doing is using multiple switchers to do that. But I know that I'm going to get some offset, so I'm going to have to take a look at where I'm going to position audio and cameras. If I have a video switcher and I've got audio happening on Pro Tools in the machine, I'm pretty much guaranteed to know that there's going to be a sync issue that I may or may not be able to correct inside Ecamm Live on the fly. That said, if I am using a secondary computer to run Pro Tools, I'm taking the output of that secondary computer and bringing that audio into the switcher, and I'm taking all my video cameras into that switcher. Now all that stuff's going into this computer at the same time. I pretty much hedged most of my bets, and chances are I'm going to have a much better chance of getting in sync with that. Now, the next piece of that, just for the sake of conversation, is that if I'm using an external video camera on a switcher and I'm running this shotgun microphone, it gets deep into the host computer. Like, just let's say, let's dial it back here. We started off with like the most simple setup, Ecamm Live and a USB mic, and in this particular case, the stock webcam, which I'm absolutely amazed by. Like, seriously, like, really? Then all of a sudden you go to all this other crazy stuff. Somewhere between all of that is where you live. And the ability, though, to get the desktop shot is a great one. If you're doing a pedal board demo, that's a great way to just be able to do this. This is, again, gets us into another, I haven't actually mentioned this before, but it's one of the things that I will mention. Is it in this box? Is it in this box? Yeah, there we go. This is a great example. Oh, I'm so glad that I had this here. This is lucky. So here's the deal. Looking down at this guy right here. What's wrong with this picture? All right, first of all, what I love about that setup there is he's got lots of room on the front of his desktop. So this is one of the things, is that when I go to do pedal demos, I want to have the pedal so I can manipulate the pedal in real time. That's great. Take a look at his monitors. The problem with many of those multi-layer, you've got all your hardware right there, but quite often the monitors are absolutely in the worst place possible. You want your monitors at ear level. So that's one of the things you want to avoid. But I've been kind of going back and forth with this. Do I actually get a desk? And I keep going. Most of the time, it puts the monitors in the wrong place. Now, you can see behind me, I've got the dual. I realized the other day, and I did a whole video, the isoacoustics amp things. I forget what they're called, but basically everywhere I've got speakers, I use isoacoustic products. They don't have the 412 one yet, but I use them to isolate. Basically, if it's a combo or studio monitors, I'm automatically isolating them from the environment because of the vibration. Again, if you listen to somebody that's got a desktop USB microphone, you hear them tapping away on the keyboard, and it's why you record your streams. And it's painful to watch your own streams, just painful. But the point being is that you want to make sure that your monitors, you're in that kind of isosceles triangle, and that means that they need to be ear height. So I'm absolutely totally amazed. This is a total freshman move, but here's the thing: is that it actually is a classic thing that traditionally video people have not been audio people. But the interesting thing about this is that he's got a ton of fancy, like he's got like a bunch of UAD stuff over there. So, but they totally and so the deal is having those monitors on top of that desk. Basically, if there's a sub on the floor and it starts vibrating, those monitors are vibrating, you're getting all this smear. You want to create a really accurate listening environment. That's kind of one of the reasons that gets us to, ooh, I love that. Ooh, 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 ooh. All right. Great questions. But that's why I love to, have this desk. So this is a desk, and I can't really show it because it's a small nightmare right now. But that's one of the other great things about having. How hard would it be to do that? No, it's a disaster. It's one of the great things about having something like an iPhone that you just connect via Lightning. You can just basically go, here's the setup. So this is a desk that my buddy Jem also has the same desk, and it's called a jerker. And it's got all these little arms that you can attach to this frame. And so I basically can I've got monitor there, older iMac there, speaker there, two monitors that I can use, video monitors that I can use when I'm shooting in that part of the room. That's one of the things that this setup is all about, is being able to take advantage of the main part of the room. Why I'm mentioning this is that I think many of us want to have the desktop experience where we can have a space to fiddle with the pedals in front of us, sit in the sweet spot of our studio, and then be able to frame some sort of set like this that looks cool. And so herein lies the challenge, is that you want to be able to get a good audio treatment. You can see different things. The whole room here was treated by Orlex. I kind of ended up, they kind of gave me an endorsement. And there's like $3,000 worth of stuff in here. The other thing is I'm building a second room such that when I'm shooting something here, I can have a second set going upstairs. The idea is being able to have that room treated. So I almost did this stream up there, but I was like, you know what? I was going bonkers enough. So let me hit the pause button. I'm going to come back to the question just a second. I'm hit the pause button and just say, look, the whole goal of what I did today was like, let me just fly by the total seat of my pants at the risk of potentially embarrassing myself and go, what are all the different things that I can try and pull together as if this was the first time? And what did I learn? So let me hit pause and just say what those things are. Have a computer, ideally, that has as few applications as possible. Like I said, one of the applications that I put on there, and I think it was for my Stream Deck, like this guy, by the way, is an amazing piece of technology. It's basically push-button control for a multitude of applications. 221 megabytes, which is like absolutely huge. You start thinking about, you multiply that by 10 or 20 or 30 applications. We very casually download stuff. Oh, that application. I'm like, I will never be as casual as I have been about doing it. When I went to set up the new iMac, the migration process went south, and I was basically in iMac hell for a good 5 hours. They kept syncing and unsyncing, syncing and unsyncing. I was really fortunate that they didn't sync, because all the space junk that's on the other machine that's upstairs didn't come over here, and I got a chance to go, that application is how much of my hard drive space? And I kind of went, okay. That gets us to if you're going to look at a computer to do this, and again, knowing that this is not a time that is economically comfortable for a lot of people, but let's just talk about best practices. Get the fastest, most RAM humanly possible. Get the secondary or tertiary up-level graphics card, because you want to have a ton of RAM, you want to have a ton of processing capacity, and you want a video card with a fair amount of RAM so it can do all these different things. I am no computer expert, but I can tell you that when I am running Premiere, Ecamm Live to capture for video shoots, because it's great. I don't have to do cards. That is, they capture cards inside cameras and then bring that over. I can do that. And that's one of the reasons I got the ATEM Mini ISO, is I can actually use a drive with that and kind of have multiple cameras come into that, have a switcher so I can just kind of see how everything's, capture all that and bring that into a DaVinci Resolve session, and it brings all the feeds in there separate of the cuts. And then I can also record off of the $250 bazillion the Sony capture cards that are inside each one of those cameras, if I need to get the raw footage, which ultimately when I go to produce something that's for hire work, I will probably do. But the point being is I have more options than I need. Went deep. Let me back up. Configure your computer with the least amount of stuff that you possibly need, the most amount of RAM. You can use Ecamm Live with just about any computer. You'll be fine. Or any Mac, excuse me. You'll be fine. Works really well. Just be conscious of not running a bunch of stuff in there. Find a camera that works ideally multi-purpose. EOS R is great. The great thing about that is with the adapter piece that's in the description and the links down below, you can then use any of the kind of the mainstream Canon lenses, which is great. The other reason that I went with the Pocket 6K guys is that those will take all those lenses that I already had. That's kind of was the big reason that I didn't go with the Sony A7S III. That's one of the advantages that RJ's got. He had this amazing look, and it's the same thing with Paul David. You look at it and you go, and now I'm at a point where when I see somebody that is using the Sony stuff, I'm like, oh, that's that look. It's gorgeous. The Canon stuff has a really lovely look. The great thing about the Blackmagic stuff is that you take in the RAW and you do color correction and you add LUTs, and it is as good as anything that's out there. And the workflow, and this is ultimately what I'm coming back to, is find a workflow that works. If you don't want to get all tweaky, just use a webcam. Find one that works, or find like an EOS R or an M50, or if Sir Richard is on here, he's got, I think the M200 is basically all the cool features of the Canon M50, but for less money, and you kind of get some kind of variable lens, 24 through 70 or whatever it is, and you can do that. Lenses are a slippery black hole. All right, the point being, I'm going to get over and answer some more questions here. Latency. Yes, what do? You fiddle around and you try stuff and you figure out where your options are, and as you're putting together your rig, you figure out if you add a switcher, you're going to expect you're going to get some latency. So it means that you potentially want to bring your audio alongside that, so you can do that. But, kind of being aware that you need to be in sync, that once you start splitting between multiple machines, it's a little bit, you have twice as much to kind of be aware of. And the other thing is that it's two opportunities for stuff to go wrong. Here it is. Is it a good idea to have separate computers for streaming and other stuff? Ivan, hello. Yes, and yes. So part of the reason I went bonkers and bought this ridiculously overpriced machine is I was like, I want to see how far I can push the envelope. And on my old iMac that I bought last year, which is a 2019 model, I think, I got to the point where I was like, I could comfortably, with testing, run Pro Tools and stream at the same time, because I had a 64 gigs of RAM. But your average machine is not going to let you do that. And I had one streaming session before I had that iMac, and on this one, everything was going great until I hit stream, and then the moment I hit play in Pro Tools crashed right in the middle of the stream. I'm like, never again. So for quote unquote most of us, having that separate computer means you can offload the processing. And there's also Live Streaming Pros, Luria, Petrucci. I don't think there's a relation, but the point being is they're all about having that second computer to offload that processing power. So I'm going to be experimenting with what that looks like. That's again where something like this, a switcher like this, enables you to offload that. And as I'm running, because this is my main machine, I'm going to do as much as I can on this machine to just kind of have things be in sync. I'm going to find out what happens when I start hooking up that switcher. The great thing about Ecamm Live, it has a virtual switcher in it, so I can run multiple things into that and be able to switch between them like that with key commands. And I haven't configured the Bluetooth on this guy yet, but with this guy, RJ, if you're still watching by any chance, you want one of these if you don't already have one. Amazing. Amazing. You got my email. Okay. Ivan, yes. All right. Bent Tom, hello. Do you have any courses available to buy on YouTube, media setups and tips? No, but I'll be creating one now. Thank you very much. There's obviously a need. I did a course curriculum thing on Helix for the with Line 6 and Sweetwater for the House of Worship. So I've kind of done one of those. By the way, for those of you that are looking to build course curriculum, Kajabi is the way to go. It is not cheap, but it's a brilliant CMS, content management system, with Pay Gateway and the ability to put videos embedded there that are not rippable. And you know, I'm how do I say this? I'm a pretty experienced ripper. Like if people put video up, if I want to grab it just to, from time to time, just grab it. I can grab most anything. I can't grab anything in Kajabi. And you know, for those of us that are creating course curriculum, and there are some stupid hacks, like back in the old days in the movie theaters, somebody would just show up with the camera and they'd videotape the screen and then they'd sell that out in front of the subway. But if you really want a high quality thing, it's really I couldn't, using kind of some of the tools that I know, I wasn't able to grab video off of Kajabi, which is great. Tom, I love that. Do we have a theme here? Do you have any courses on streaming setups and tips for better audio? So I'm going to be creating a bunch of what I'm weighing out this year is trying to find the balance between what you do for free and what you charge people for. There's going to be a Modes, Music, and More course that's going to be happening that is hopefully going to get out the door in the next month. Madly passionate about that, but I'm madly passionate. That's why this GTR show, Guitar, Technology, and Recording. And obviously people seem to be so interested. All right. So coming, as is, kind of comparing, this is one of the reasons that I went bonkers. I'm like, look, I can write this stuff off. Why don't I actually test the T5 versus the T7? Why don't I actually see how hot this gets? Which means that I forgot to mention, and they're in the links there, lights. So I'm going to hit the pause button once again. So, all right, so let's fess up here and have the honest conversation. Part of what happened is in the midst of my whole day in design on Friday, literally, Friday is set aside for this show because I'm serious about this show. Is that in the midst of the computer mayhem, but I wanted to go, let's see what happens if I get to be you and I just do it from the ground up. What worked, what didn't. Preparation. I had all this great idea of slides and overlays and all this stuff, gone. And that run of show, gone. It would have been amazing, but I was able to pull enough together by the seat of my pants. Moral of the story is it's always going to be a little bit like that. Because we have a tendency to over-design. So I'm going to be doing a bunch of reviews, but the idea is the review stuff is going to help people make informed decisions. And then the idea is that I will be putting together some setups and then probably a little bit of course curriculum around that. But the other thing is that when you leave that open with the ability for people to just have the affiliate link, then that's another route to being able to compensate for the time invested. going back and forth. Great questions. Thank you. Tom Atkins, my dear friend, computer networking monitoring tools. Yes, I've had weird dropouts on my background audio. Going to look in prepping with the looper. Thank you. Yeah, so Tom, looping and popping, dropouts and pops are kind of the telltale system of a telltale sign that things are being overtaxed, right? When you go into Pro Tools at 32 samples, which is my preferred rate, I can feel the difference between 32 and 64. Again, guys like RJ, like they live in a groove world where that little tiny bit of space is the difference between being in the pocket and not being in the pocket. And the idea of being able to run your Pro Tools session at the optimal, lowest possible buffer is the deal. But then all of a sudden you start getting these artifacts, especially when you start doing more and more extreme, running more plugins, running more instances of things happening in the background. That's one of the other reasons that, and I left it upstairs, the Zoom audio interface, and I've got the two of them, the U22 and the U44, which I'm going to be doing some videos around as well. They're nice, simple, stupid audio interfaces that come bundled with Ableton Live Lite, which is not as much of a resource hog as Pro Tools is. And the great thing about them is they're designed to be loop oriented. So you basically take your tracks into that, it's the equivalent of that, but as a DAW that you can record into, and you can have multi-track editing capacity, and then the ability to just loop that. Again, if you think about a loop function in Pro Tools, and there's all sorts of processing going on, Pro Tools is persnickety, especially if you want to play in. One of the things that amazed me about the early versions of Live Lite, literally going back a decade, was that they could render audio not in real time, but like they just kind of rendered it to disk. That is to say, with Pro Tools, you got to kind of wait for it to play through the entire thing. It's nice because you can listen as you're monitoring that. But the ability to render kind of like that really made me aware how powerful Ableton Live is. It's a great application. So I've got the Lite. I'm going to be working with that to see kind of how, again, testing these things as a footprint. So the other part of this is the monitoring, the dropouts on background audio. First of all, so tech end of things. Ultimately, you may be running too many things at the same time. So first and foremost, turn as many things off as you can and start adding them in different combinations and start seeing what's going wrong where. Which combination of things turns your computer into crash land or dropout land. It also, again, is one of the reasons why it's really great to record your content locally, and also to just stream for an hour and try and break stuff. Like, all right, so and actually just call out, right, I've got this on. Now I'm adding this. Now I'm adding that. Now I'm adding this. And literally try and break stuff. Brian, I saw your comment. I ran out of time. Mill Valley? Wait a second. What? Is that? No. Oh, it says Mill Valley because that's where, yeah. You're not. You're in LA, dude. Okay. Sorry, that was me having a conversation with my buddy Brian Crow, who's got a question in here. Okay. Oh, Brian and I have known each other forever since we had hair up to here and boots. We'll just leave it there. But in any case, so he's originally from Mill Valley, but he's in LA. Okay, so Tom, so getting back to this, then calling out what it is that you're adding, next, and seeing when you start to get conflicts, and then break it down and then start with maybe a different order of things and seeing when and where it's happening. That will be a help. And again, it may be just having a second computer and then just trying to work with any offsets you get. Brian Crow, my dear friend. In the ATEM control software, there's a setting to adjust the latency between audio and video coming from an internal, coming in from an internal mic. Cautionary tales about the ATEM Mini ISO regarding differences in HDMI inputs. We use that at the Alameda Comedy Club, and there have been issues. Okay, so that gets us to an interesting subset here. Thank you for that, Brian. One of my dearest, oldest friends. That came out wrong. So continuity is one of the other things that we want to look for. So that one of the reasons that I kind of went the Pocket 6 case was, I was like, okay, I need 3 cameras that I can share a common set of lenses between, such that when I go between my A camera, or in this case, my A camera, my B down the neck shot, and my C desktop, or kind of this shot of me playing, all of which I can control from this guy, or all of which I can control from the Stream Deck, and or from the ability to use key commands to control the scenes in Ecamm Live. Visual continuity is one of the things that I really want to be able to work with. One of the other great things about Ecamm Live is it also, there we go. Oh, I've gone black and white. Gives you the ability to manipulate the color in the picture settings, and that is huge. Now, one of the interesting things about this setup, earlier I alluded to the fact I've got 2 video monitors up here, because that, actually you can see where the middle of the diamond is that's actually the center of this room. This room acoustically is treated for that being the sweet spot there. And this, basically I've got it set up. This is far enough over in the room that I can shoot here, and I can set up cameras there, with the exception of this backline here, which, by the way, I use tape to mark. Tape's been moved, but the idea is both those the 412 cabinets are on little rolly guys, and I can just roll them out of there or roll them to the side there, and you'll never know that this stuff is here. So the idea is I'm looking for a certain amount of continuity. I was going back, I've done a bunch of gear demos, and it's not horn tuning thing. I was kind of like, I'm going to be doing something for Celestion Speaker Mix Pro that's going to incorporate, Brainworks has a thing called Gig Performer. And Speaker Mix Pro is Celestion's IR mixer plugin that is, it only works in the framework of a DAW. Gig Performer is basically a standalone application that you can use on a computer, or in the case of the demo I'll be shooting tomorrow, on a laptop, and you can run all your studio plugins. And it's nuts. And so I happened to send an email off to one of my friends over at Brainworks/Plugin Alliance, and I happened to go through and make a list of all the videos that I shot for them. And I was like, that. So I've shot a lot of for hire content, like a lot. And so I'm hyper aware as I watch guys like RJ, as I watch guys like Paul Davids, as I watch guys, who are the people whose video work Fluff. I love Fluff. And Fluff has been live streaming like a maniac. And one of the things that he did was he showed how he does his color correction stuff. By the way, I'm always very careful. People know I go to church. They know I'm involved in the worship thing, but I'm always really chilled about as I talk about it. So, but the guys at Worship Tutorials, they're unreal. They do the best sound design, besides Larry Mitchell. They do the best sound design of presets available in the market. There's just nobody that comes close to them, and their video production is the best. Those guys know their stuff. So fortunately, I've worked out a deal. I'm going to show one of those guys a little guitar stuff, and they're going to get me smarter in the video studio. And they were instrumental in my purchase of a bunch of the decisions that I made, as was Lincoln Brewster. So the point being is that create an ecosystem in which you can work. Now, the great thing about an ecosystem, there are a number of videos that I shot in this past year, and especially over the past 6 months, that I was using the EOS R that's over there, and I was using a combination of 7Ds. Old 7Ds, because way back when I was like the orange video guy, my videographer had an early Mark V, Canon Mark V, 5D, like Mark whatever it was that had video. Excuse me, and then he had me buy a 7D because you could shoot video in there. And we were literally one of the first groups of people to be shooting for hire videos using 7Ds. So, and as you know, I mean, so the interesting thing about where things are at is that this is the great leveler. The content that I shot for other companies is well over 1 million plays, but it was shot for other people's YouTube channels. I'm kind of like you. I'm like building up my own YouTube channel kind of from brick by brick. And I'm shooting a bunch of content for other manufacturers' channels to build some marketplace awareness, because there was a period of time I was very much in this space. Then I went out and did Guitar Hero and made a record and toured and kind of, I guess the record was before the YouTube thing. But the point being is that I'm coming back to this. And so building a YouTube channel from scratch is like, that's going to put some muscle on the bones, and that it's a good thing. So I'll be sharing the things that I learned in the process of doing that. One of the the areas that we can benefit one another is just kind of asking. I'm happy to share that. All right, so I don't see any new questions here, but I will crawl back up. And he's a guitar wizard. I wouldn't go that far. Rick, you're a gem, a man of service. With great pleasure, my friend. With great pleasure. I love it when I see people log in from different destinations. All right, let's see what we've got. Gabe, all right. Make sure to like the stream. Oh, thanks so much. If you have Gabriel, love you, my brother. So this is another thing. That's a great point. Gabe, many, many thanks. So this is one of the interesting things, and I'm so glad you brought this up. And this is what happens when you've, and by the way, I write stuff out all the time. And so I made giant lists, which is kind of why I knew my topics. I just didn't get a chance to actually create the overlays that I would love to have made. So Gabe, thank you for that. So here's the deal. The ability to choose how you're going to present your format. So I'm actually going to talk about something that I wasn't planning on talking about. One of the things that you can do as you're building your channel is you can run some YouTube ads. And one of the telltale signs is you see the number of plays compared to the number of comments. And here's the thing, is like, YouTubers make their money, some of it, by having ad placements. So one of the things that I have done is I've started using some YouTube ads. And in the process, one of the things that happens is you go into the analytics and you begin to kind of go, wow, I gained 70 subscribers. I've got like just over 2,000 subscribers right now. I gained 70 in the last month, largely from ad placements. That means I'm getting conversions from people that watched an ad that I placed in an in-stream video, and they opted to follow me. I also am able to watch the playtime, and one of the Celestian videos that I did on my channel, it's like a 18-minute video. I'm getting tremendous retention on these videos. Most of the time you're like, skip, just like, I don't want to hear about your get rich scheme and, whatever. It's actually really nice. So this gets to Gabe's comment, which is a matter of format. And if you're still here and you are deathly serious about building your YouTube channel, thanks for hanging out. I'm going to make this as worthwhile as I possibly can. One of the things that you can do is at the very beginning of the video go, hey, this is Doug. In this video, we're going to be talking about the Stream Deck, blah, blah, blah. Channel bumper. Doug, bunch of videos, the Guitar Hero thing, and me on stage with Joe Satriani and Paul Gilbert manipulating Joe's whammy bar, boom. Then I get it, hey, all right, well, the first thing we're going to do is this. If I see that as an in-stream video ad, I'm pretty much like, it makes me want to skip. So it's one of the reasons in this particular moment I lead with a playing segment. Oh, I love it. Oh, Robert, you're speaking my love language. Oh, come on, bring it on. So the concept is that I lead with playing. And this is one of the things I want to encourage you guys to do. Again, RJ, one of the reasons I find him to be such an inspiration is every time I see him play, he plays something different. His well is really deep. He can play pretty much anything. And he plays it exceedingly well, and he plays it off the cuff. I'm kind of like, I need to kind of get into whatever vibe it is. I can walk into a situation, into a playing situation, and walk in and do my thing. But when I'm in the demo chair, I'm trying to do your thing, which means I'm going to like, okay, I need to be like 8 or 10 different guys. And in the process of doing that, I kind of need to kind of find where I'm going to sit in the time for that thing. And the key thing that I do is every time I just really push myself to not repeat myself, such that every time, if I'm taking a Hendrix or a John Mayer type of vibe. I'm going to try and change it up a little bit so you don't go like, I heard him do that demo. As opposed to like, oh, I really like when he plays that vibe, or hopefully really likes that. Because there are only so many vibes you can go for. But the idea is when you place the best version of yourself, and the thing about myself is I want, if if you're watching this and then you see me play 12 months from now, I want you to kind of go, oh man, that guy has practiced for a year. There was a period of time Atma and I, drummer I played with for many years, we would go down and play at a place called the Cat Club. And every time we came down there, we would have put, every week we were practicing 4 times a week for like 4 hours practice, like really honing it. And there was a guy that was down there, this great guitar player, who said, every time you guys come down, you're better. And it wasn't like that we sucked and we kind of like, and I'm not saying that we were amazing. What I'm saying is like, it was significantly noticeable that every time we came down, like once a month, they were like, you got better. That is the you that you want to place in front of you, people that, the people that are viewing these things. And that way, thank you very much, Ash. Really appreciate it. You want to put your best version of yourself forward. So the traditional format, you introduce the topic, you run your channel bumper, you do the video. But if you're going to place that in the middle of an ad somewhere, it's basically you're giving people spam. Versus like, the idea is like if you're playing and people are into it, they just want to have a great experience. The great thing about an in-stream experience is that, like, I'm not trying to steal an audience. I'm just trying to get some discovery. That YouTuber whose audience I am having the opportunity to quote-unquote audition for is somebody that makes money when I pay for an ad. So the point being is that everybody wins. I'm respectful about what I do when I come in. And I just do my best to play and demonstrate the product as best I possibly can. All right, so Melissa was dinging me. I got another question. So Robert, about video storage. And then I've got a jet in about 5 minutes. Thanks, love. Big hand for Mrs. Melissa Doppler for all her help. Again, thank you. Everybody's been hanging out. Really, really, really appreciate it. Okay, so Robert, yes, yes, and yes. Oh, boy. This is a great question. So his question is, what do you use for video storage? Multiple dock bays, hot swap. So the interesting thing, this is a Voyager from, the funny thing is this is from newer, before they became known for all their lights. And this is a hot swappable dock bay that one of the T5s that I bought was an internal drive, and way back when I did the Gear Tunes live streaming launch, which is interesting because I've been doing this live streaming thing for quite some time. We had all these, this is a Seagate drive, that basically these suckers just pop in here, and it's basically like that, and you're good to go. The interesting thing is I pulled this out, and I got that sucker like nearly, gotta be 10 years ago, and I bought a whole bunch of them because we wanted to have a whole bay of them. Because we had an A drive and a B drive, because it's honestly, it's not safe until it's in 3 places. We only had 2. But the point being is that's kind of why I went down the Samsung drive thing. So what's great about these guys are portable, right? So they're just kind of standalone, which there's a lot of convenience about. And they're great for video. And I do want to see the T7 versus the T5, because this is basically got a ridiculous amount of throughput, but it needs to be USB 3.2, I think. So I will write up the specs on what these are. But basically, it's twice as fast, and for the money, this guy is about 2/3, maybe 3/4 of the price of this. I buy 2 terabyte drives because guess what? You're going to run out of space sooner than later, especially with 6K video, lunatics. But these guys, what's neat about this is I pulled this puppy out and I was looking at the specs and I was like, USB 3.0? This thing's like 10 years old. I'm like, it's not quite 10 years old, but to look on the back of this box, that when we launched Gear Tunes, which was like a long time ago, that was USB 3.0 compliant. So I reached out to John Falcon, John Luini, Joe Satriani streaming guy, who is sorry, I'm looking at the old camera. who's like the expert streamer, and I was like, hey, because he was the one that did the GearTunes streaming launch, and he was the one that suggested we get these. I said, are these still a viable thing? He said, absolutely. So I'm going to experiment with different things. The thing that's great about these drive bays is they are hot swappable, which basically means as soon as you're done with your drive, you put another one in there and then you stockpile drives. That's a great question. The other thing is that I am a mad Dropboxer. I live on Dropbox. I think I've probably got, I think last time I checked, it was 7.5 terabytes up in the cloud. So I am constantly taking, generally speaking, the way I've worked historically is I use the internal drive on my machine. We're going, I've got 2 minutes. Let's see if I can do this. Historically, hey, what's going on, Brian? And Rob, hey. With great pleasure. Thank you. Really appreciate it. Awesome. Thank you so much. Really appreciate it, Brian. Miss Atma too. He's alive, but he's in Europe. For anybody who's wondering, you never know when you're like, I miss him too. All right. So the thing is that in the old days, for those of us that kind of date back to the computer with multiple drives that you ran you had your audio files in Pro Tools. You had basically back in the old days, you needed to have an applications drive and your system drive, and then all your audio would live on other drives and your samples would live on other drives. The computers these days are fast enough and good enough that I've had the privilege of not having to work like that because I do not trust drives. They are undependable. They will break, and there's stuff that goes wrong. Where did Braxel's comment go? Wanted to bring it in. So the point being, I don't trust external drives. I never will trust external drives. I've only had one issue of corruption with Dropbox, which I treat as a virtual drive. When I'm done with something, and I did this yesterday, I wrap up a bunch of stuff. Brian, there were some compatibility issues with the Samsung drives and the A10. They've been ironed out with software updates, which Blackmagic does frequently. Had to switch to Wise drives. Hit me up. I'm here. Let's get together. Oh, awesome. Great. Awesome. All right. 3 minutes until my first lesson starts. So, first of all, everything that I read about the Samsung drives on both of these guys is a small percentage of the people they just failed on in the middle of something, either a transfer or a middle of thing. And then one of the failure things was not recognizing the drive, basically have to reformat that. That's why I stopped using hard drives. I'm kind of like, the reason I've got a rocket ship of a computer is that I want to be able to use that drive there. Once I'm actually working locally, if I want to be able to use that drive for all the stuff that I'm doing, I have the option of doing that. What I've done is I basically expanded my workflow to be you, and I'm going to try all these different options, whether it is the internal hot swappable drives, whether it's the external ones, whether it's the different switchers, the little mini monitors, the ATEM streaming bridge. Basically, my whole thing is I'm going to try all these things out. I'm going to do demo videos. I'm going to share what I've learned with you guys, and we'll have more streams like this, and we'll be able to ask questions like this as well. All right, I want to thank you so much for hanging out. Really appreciate it. I always want it to be better, but I hope this served your needs. I think I talked about just about all the gear, and feel free to hit me up with questions. I will finally be able to say, Tom Adkins, that doc has got links to a bunch of stuff, and the stuff that's on Amazon, and then the Sweetwater stuff. I'm an affiliate, but I did not have time to actually add my Sweetwater affiliate links, but those will be getting changed in the next day. In any case, I want to thank you so much for spending this time, and I'm here to help. And we're going to consistently use the same form there, such that I've got a historical collection of that stuff, such that if you've got midweek questions, I can come back and answer them. So, there's going to be Q&A because that's a big part of what this is about. Thank you so much. Have a great